Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to another D. Hilton Associates webinar. Today, we're going to be talking about how the COVID-19 pandemic has affected executive recruiting. But first, we'll just go through a couple of administrative items just to give time for people to log in and settle in. We will be recording this presentation, so all individuals that have registered for the event will receive a recording in about 3 to 5 days. There'll be information in that email as well to, if you would like a copy of the presentation, we'll give you an opportunity to receive the presentation as well. We'll keep the presentation to about 45 minutes to 50 minutes to allow time at the end for questions. But if you do have questions during the process, go ahead and use the Q&A section. We'll try to get to those questions either on the fly or at the end of the presentation. Joining me today, we have John Andrews. Hi, John. How are you?
Good afternoon.
And I also have David Hilton joining me. How are you, David?
Aloha.
Well, we look to have a great conversation, so I want to go ahead and kick it over to John and take it away, John.
All right. Appreciate everybody for joining us today. When we talk about executive recruiting in our office during the last 3 months, the big questions were, is there a new normal? Is there a normal? What is going to be same practices? So we sent out a survey to the industry for the larger credit unions and see what the practice was. So today's presentation will be a result of that feedback. We have 109 people that are credit unions that participated, so we appreciate everybody for doing that. We know it takes some time out of your day, and it really helps our fellow credit unions, and I think it just shows the spirit of the industry that we're willing to provide this information. So hopefully it wasn't too painful filling out, but again, 109 folks filled this out. And today's presentation, we're going to break it down into 3 areas. So we know people are currently recruiting. So we asked those credit unions specifically, how are your practices going? And then we're going to compare that against the recruiting that we're doing right now. Then the second component is, well, if you're still planning to recruit sometime this year or next year, does the COVID-19 change any of the thought processes of the methodology, timeframes, access to candidates, those types of things? And then the third part, we're just going to show some of our observations and some of our anecdotes that we've seen in the last few months. So that's the game plan today, and we'll keep it to 45 minutes for you. So when we look at who participated, it was a pretty even distribution of folks at 100 million all the way up to $1 billion. So we're real pleased to see that. All the data was cross-tab. So if we were trying to look at differences between our larger credit unions doing something that different than medium-sized credit unions, and you'll see a lot of similarities of how people are attacking these questions. So if we did see a differential, we'll let you know. But if you don't see one, just consider it that, hey, everybody's kind of looking at these issues the same way. So the big first question was, every year people end their career and it's time to transition to retirement. So how many executives were planning on retire this year? And it was 35% have execs, 35% of credit unions have execs that are planning to retire.
That's about what's normal for a typical year. If you go back to the 08, 09 crisis, the financial crisis, that number was a lot lower at that point in time. And the reason being was that a lot of people decided to stay on because their 401k wasn't doing well, or their own financial situation wasn't what they thought it would be. So what they did was they put their retirement off for a couple of years.
And then David, like, you go back to 2008, 2009, what's different now?
Well, what's different now is, first of all, the stock market's doing okay. It's not doing great, but it's doing okay. In addition to that, 2008, 2009, we didn't have the number of jobs that were lost, and people did have jobs, but they decided that they'd keep those jobs so they could earn some additional funds, so that when the retirement did come, they would have some more money for retirement.
So when we look at statistics, 8 out of 10, no no plans of changing or deviating from their original plan. And only 5% said they were going to leave early. Like, I don't want to deal with this. I'm out of here. And perhaps that was credit union induced or, executive induced. But it was interesting to say only 13% are going to stay because of the event so far. Now, I don't know, David, and every month, will that change, or what do you think? Or will it be pretty constant?
I think that that's going to be pretty constant. I don't think these are COVID-19 positions that we're talking about. The senior level positions for credit unions don't typically change because of the situation that we're in. So I think we'll see the same type of numbers for a while.
So our next question, we just had some curiosity around the idea would bankers kind of flood us with resumes, because there was a lot of media saying, are people going to downsize? Are they going to look at chopping a few layers of management out? But when the banks came out, they really made a commitment. We're not going to lay off. We're not going to make changes. And then every month we didn't know if that would change or that position would change. But it was interesting, about 76% of you are getting the same amount of unsolicited resumes out there, and only, less than 10% are getting something, more than they might have expected on a normal day.
And that again, I think is because this is COVID-19 and the positions that we're talking about are senior level positions. And I don't believe that of the 30 million plus people who lost their positions, many of them were credit union positions or banking positions. So those numbers look the same and should look the same.
So the next part of the question is, if we know 26% of you are going to be actively recruiting right now, what have you changed in the process? And so what we're seeing here is 43% of you said that there's no changes to our targeting timeframes. So that kind of suggests to us that you've got a target date to get this filled, and you put a timeline together and you're shooting for that. 32% of you has said we are committed to the position, but we're delaying the start. And 21% of you have said we're going to hold off until we can do personal interviews to make this happen. And those were the three big things that we saw out of that.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the 32% and the 21%, and even there was another 4% that put positions on hold altogether, that equals more than 50%. It's about 57%. And the problem is that credit unions want to do in-person interviews, and they can't do in-person interviews under these types of circumstances. So they're not changing their time frame, but they're also not necessarily going to start the searches the same way they would have started the searches if there was no COVID-19. So what we're seeing is just a tremendous number of credit unions who are at the point where they may have found the candidates they like, but they just can't interview them in person.
So you think there'll probably be an increase on the on hold part as we'll get to that point, and then
I think it's going to, that on hold part is going to continue to grow. Yes.
Yeah. Well, at the conclusion of today, we got some ideas of how do you keep those people engaged, because, if you're, if there's multiple offers out there, or they're existing organizations trying to retain them, every day that they're not with you, there's a risk. So we'll talk about some strategies there for sure. And then the next question, of those 26% of Craigens that are recruiting right now, what are the jobs they're looking for? So 32% of the jobs right now are CLOs. Now this is just sweet guys. So easy for you to say.
Say that 3 times fast.
I absolutely am not going to say that again. But it's almost 2 to 1, because after 32% of you looking for chief lending officers, the next category is CEOs at 14%, CFOs at 14%, CIOs in the same 14%, and then COOs. So, question I kind of bandied back and forth with David about, why is it 2 to 1 on CLOs right now?
Well, I think that, well, first of all, with so many people out of work, the CLO position becomes that much more important. You don't necessarily want to make loans to people who are unemployed or have no foreseeable employment in the future. So the CLO position is become very important. In addition to that, I always look at CLO positions and CEO positions as well as a resume within a resume. How do you know if the C-suite executive really can do the job? They, the numbers may look good, the places they came from may look good, but you can't dig in too deep to find out whether or not the delinquency is as it should be, the charge-offs as it should be, et cetera, et cetera. What D. Hilton Associates does is we use retired executives to analyze that part of the search, so that we have a better understanding of whether or not you're looking at the right type of people.
So, I mean, to coin a phrase, it's kind of the forensic part of recruiting, in the sense that, you have to ask another 2 or 3 levels of questions, because you can be, success by proxy. And, I was part of the team, but not actually doing the team. So it is an increase on the CLOs. And I think, the months going forward, I think this distribution will probably stay the same. Don't you think?
I think it may, the CEO position may grow to something greater than 14% as we move it later into the year and into the beginning of next year. There are a number of CEOs that are retiring or planning to retire, and they just don't want to leave their position right now and leave their credit union in a lurch. So that 14% may be a little bit low compared to what we're going to see in the future.
Okay. When we look at why the recruiting is happening, the traditional responses would be someone's retiring, or somebody has moved on, or there is a termination. But it was interesting that 21% of these are new positions. So expanding the C-suite, perhaps bringing more technical expertise in areas. But before we get to that, I want to talk about, David, what do you see there of that retirement number versus resignation versus termination?
Those numbers look very similar to other years, with the exception of 08 and 09. Those numbers are pretty close to what we see year in and year out. There are those people who are retiring. There are those people who are asked to retire. I always call that being promoted to member. Somebody had mentioned that somewhere along the line. I thought that was a really great analysis of what happens when you lose your job. You get promoted to member. But those numbers are pretty much what I would expect in a normal year.
And that resignation at 20%, is that just the credit union given the opportunity to have a transition on their terms?
Yeah, the transition on their terms,
or our terms, I should say.
Yeah, the terms of the credit union's terms. What we're also seeing is credit union CEOs telling their boards that they have very qualified number 2s and number 3s. And I've heard of situations where the board member who is being told this turned around to the CEO and said, well, why don't you leave early and let one of these people take the job if they're that good and they have a longer runway than you do. Why not make the change now, and you go and retire and let that C-suite executive take the position.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So on that coming back to that new position information there, if you've been in the business 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, you've obviously seen the product line expand, more sophistication. You've seen delivery channels expand, and that classic generic lender. Now, do you have expertise in business? Do you have expertise in mortgage? Do you have expertise in retail or consumer? And so I think we're adding positions because the business is expanding and becoming more sophisticated, and you do need that technical person.
Yeah, I think you also need to have more technical expertise in the area of regulation. As more credit unions become close to $10 billion in assets, that there's a whole new level of regulation that needs to be put in place. And that also is a new position to the credit union.
You think about the idea that, we do organizational reviews all the time, and what's emerging is that technical level. We fought hard to have HR, and we fought hard to have marketing, to have a seat at the table at the C-suite. And now that this next generation of executive in risk, in compliance, are definitely going to play an important role going forward. Credit unions over at 10 billion, you have an additional burden when it comes to compliance. But, how can it not keep filtering down to lower and lower credit unions? So that's been a big plus.
Well, I think it's not just credit unions that are over 10 billion. I think it's credit unions that are close to 5 billion. They
sure.
need to start thinking about those regulations and start getting those types of departments in place, because it doesn't take long to go from 5 to 10 if you want to. Now, there are some credit unions who would like to stay below the $10 billion mark, but for those credit unions who are thinking about just blowing through the $10 billion mark, $5 billion is a good time to start looking.
And the way the deposit growth has gone this year, you're birthing $500 million credit unions too. These big branches these days. So you're going to get there whether you like it or not. So which is, a testament to our industry that we are safe and secure, and members are feeling good about using us. But that is creating that additional responsibility at the C-suite level. So the next question was, if we look at search methods, how are you going about doing a search? So the number one strategy is to use a search firm.
Yay.
I have a recommendation.
Yeah. And the second, doing it yourself, but kind of using a LinkedIn strategy, an online networking. And then there's other methods, and then just doing it yourself and using the kind of the trade press to say, hey, we've got a job opening. But David, just talk about, is this a normal year, or is this what you typically see?
Again, this is typical of what we see. The whole concept of using LinkedIn has some problems that go along with it. The LinkedIn profile, or the use of LinkedIn for looking for jobs is scary to some potential employees. Potential candidates. They're afraid to get their name out there for fear that their own employer will see them as a candidate. That becomes a problem. In small communities, it's a problem if you're looking for to close a position. And there was a situation not too long ago where I did interviews in a hotel. This is a little bit before using the video conference type of way of doing things. So I had candidates coming to the hotel, spending an hour and a half with me in a conference room in the hotel, and I would have one coming in, one going out, and it would just go on for the whole day. And what was interesting was one of the people that worked for the hotel, who was delivering water and coffee, knew some of the candidates. And that caused some friction within the candidates that didn't need to happen.
This just in, LinkedIn would like to raise our bill. So I got in trouble last time, so at least we're equal opportunity offending today. When we look at our next slide, we know you're going to get that barrier where it's face-to-face. Is there an alternative? Is it crucial to getting that done? And right now, we see 47% of the respondents are using video, 16% are using the telephone, and then, literally 1 out of 4, a little over 1 out of 4 are going to postpone. They can do that face-to-face.
And video is fine, but so many credit unions want to do a in-person interview that the video is not the last step. there's the video, and then there's the personal interview after the fact. So we have right now we have over 50 searches going on, and every one of those 50 searches are at the point where we've gone through the video process and we're just waiting for the credit union to say, okay, bring the candidates in, or the candidates to tell us that they're comfortable going in to visit the credit union. So video works well, but it only works well up until a point. And then at that certain point, it becomes necessary to bring people in person.
And some of you participating are probably too young to remember, but remember when we had to go get find Kinkos all over the world. Is there a Kinko's on your block? Is there Kinko in the next city? And
that's where they did their video.
So we're kind of pioneers of saying, let's don't bring all these people and travel all over the place if we're not going to be serious at that point. So
yeah, we've been using video for 20 years now.
Yeah.
We just used to use Kinko's because you as a candidate, the people we're talking to today didn't have the access to a laptop or a computer with a camera, so it was Kinko's or nothing.
Yeah, my favorite story. A guy was interviewing with us. He was in his office, and somebody burst into his office, and he just read them the riot. Get out of here! Why didn't you knock? And guess what the question he was answering at the time was? How do you feel about employee relations, and what kind of manager you are?
Can you give us an example?
you just nailed it. So when we look at our next question, it's interesting, and we do this with searches forever, is how wide a net are we going to cast? So right now we see 3 out of 4 credit unions willing to look at a nationwide search and make sure there's relocation as part of the package to see they get the best and brightest. We see 17% or 18%, let's call it, doing a local or regional search with no relo in part of that. And then people looking at local and regional, but also offering relo. So what do you think, David?
Well, personally, I think that 3/4 of the searches that are being done have relo involved. I think the key question is what is considered relocation. There's the cost of bringing the candidate to the new city to look for housing. There's the cost of bringing the spouse and maybe the family to the new city to look at schools and churches and other places that are important to them. There's the actual cost of looking for houses and meeting with real estate people. There's the cost of temporary housing while they're looking for a house. There's so many costs involved that relocation has very different meanings to different credit unions.
When you talked earlier about the forensic recruiting and there's 3 other credit unions in town, we'll just go see if any of those guys are interested. The problem with that is what?
The problem with that is that there's the good chance that those people are going to know you, or they're going to know something about you, and your mysteriousness is blown. Everyone now knows you're looking for a position.
And I always think too, it's like they're dealing with the same economic issues, in the same community. You might not be getting a new take on some issues or problems you're trying to fix or improve.
That's correct. I mean, you may be having the same exact problems, and somebody from another part of the country can have other ideas as to how to fix that problem or change the way you doing business.
The networks are national. We know you have listservs, and you have, everybody has good ideas of how they want to approach things, but still, you see similarity in how people attack issues, right? At the local level,
especially at a regional and local level, and especially in lending at a regional and local level. That's probably the biggest problem. You're running into people who have the same exact lending problems as you do.
And one of the things I like to tell clients is, if you think you're going to do local or regional, it's not going to save money. At the C-suite, it is a national market. And what I always like to say is there was a kid that grew up in your local community, but when they got out of college or they were ready to go into the workforce, the economy wasn't good. There were no jobs. They had to go someplace else. So if you don't cast that national net, you might not get a kid. There could be a kid that wants to come home. And, that's why we always try to, it's not going to cost you more to get the networking out there, and let's see who wants to come home.
We don't call them kids. We call them potential associates.
Yes, that's exactly right. If we go to the next slide here, this is a topic that's been around since the 50s. Is there a magic bullet out there? Is there a test you can take to say that will have a predictive value that will say this is the candidate for you? And the quick answer to that is
no.
Okay. Usually he says hell no. So that was good.
That's a long answer.
That's a long answer. So when you look at that, over 50% of the survey participants said, yes, we are using tests. 13 said we've used them past, but not this time. And 1/3 have said we're not using them. So what's your take on that?
Well, first and foremost, the test can't be the only tool, and it can't even be the first tool you use. A test is a great additional tool. It helps round out all the other things that you're going to be doing. If you ask for a resume and you ask for a test and that's it, then you've basically decided that you didn't need to find out anything more than those two things to make your decision. What we do at D. Hilton Associates is we ask candidates to fill out questionnaires, to write reports, to go through a number of interviews with our senior recruiters. We ask them to get themselves as prepared as possible to go into the credit union and understand the credit union's strengths and weaknesses. If you're just using tests and a resume, then you've shortchanged yourself tremendously.
And this is not anecdotal out there. We did a study in the last 60 days. So we went back 10 years and we looked at all of our CEO placements, and then we cross-tabbed, or we looked at the correlation between financial performance, member satisfaction, because we have a lot of data points. And it simply came back, it's undifferentiated. There's not one magic bullet that says if they answer this on a standardized test. So what we've done is we've kind of pivoted off of that idea and started to create or develop a credit union specific competency leadership model that would start to get at, there's going to be some better correlations out there than a standardized test. So we'll keep you posted in the coming months of how that's going. And if you're going to be a prospective candidate, sorry, you're going to have to participate in it. So our next question is, are you offering contracts or employment agreements? The reason that we wanted to ask this question is because of COVID-19, are people hesitant to pull the trigger and say, yeah, I'm committing to a new job? And if they are, is there going to be a softer landing zone if it doesn't work out? Or I could be there a month and all of a sudden there's furloughs, or we're going to be minimizing the C-suite, account. I'm the last one here. Does that mean I'm the first one to go? And this is what we found, that 71% of the participants in the survey are not offering contract or employment agreements at that time. And that's a little bit different than what we've seen in our practice, right?
It's a little bit higher. Yeah. It's higher, and I'm assuming it's higher because people are a little more hesitant to make the move because of COVID-19. But not only that, but because it's just a huge move. You're making the assumption that they're leaving a real good position at another credit union or another financial institution to take your position. And in order to do that, they want something in exchange. Now, I think the question may have been asked a little bit, it could have been asked a little bit differently, because anytime you write down the terms of the agreement with the candidate, that would be considered an employment agreement or a contract.
So like an offer letter?
So yeah, like an offer, an offer sheet. So if you say this is the position that we're offering you, this is the salary, this is the bonus, this is the benefits, this is the start date, this is the severance package if there is a severance package. I mean, that basically is an employment agreement. It may not last forever, but it's certainly an employment agreement when you're starting the position.
So the kind of the piggyback of that question was, we were wondering if executives would ask up front, if they were candidates selected, were they asking a little bit more information? Well, what about a termination clause or benefits? And it kind of correlates with the first question. 86% said no.
Yeah, they're not offering a formal termination benefit, but most credit unions have a handbook, a personnel or a human resources handbook that talks about termination. So I'm sure that the credit union is telling the candidate, refer to the handbook.
Yeah, this is our practice, right?
And this is our practice,
yeah.
And this is the termination benefits.
Okay. So when we look at an offer, just seeing if anything's different today versus, in the past, the question said, what's part of it? So 43% are offering a bonus program, 28% are offering a bonus, which is kind of an annual plan, plus a longer term retirement retention program. 21% are offering retirement retention, and then 7% are offering neither.
Yeah, I looked at this a little bit differently, and I came up with 72% of credit unions are offering a bonus. If you take the first column, you take the second column, the number is very high in terms of a bonus. What isn't indicated in this question is when during the year are you taking the position? So if the candidate is taking the position late in the year, there's probably no bonus for the first year, but the second year might have a bonus. So we're not really taking that into consideration when we look at the 72%.
We have a lot of credit unions where we help them with their executive scorecards and their development of bonuses. And you look at this year, no one is going to work harder this year for the least return and be more fulfilling. Like, this is the most fulfilling year I've had. And there's not going to be something to show for it in the terms of there's a scorecard that's not going to be, knocking out of the park. So when we look at this, we don't want credit unions to give up on the variable pay piece, because we've worked so hard as an industry to do pay for performance, to hold executives accountable. Now, do we rework things? Do we use more qualitative metrics this year? Absolutely. But don't just say we're shutting this down and wait, we'll get them next year. Like the Mets.
Like the Mets. I believe that having something in your bonus plan that says how well did you do during the COVID-19 time frame is very important. So that has to be changed. It can either be part of the board's evaluation of the executive, in most cases the CEO, or it could be part of the CEO's evaluation of their C-suite. But I think that it has to be reflected somewhere that that people did well or they didn't do well during the COVID-19 time frame.
So for our clients, we're developing an extension to our CEO evaluation tool or C-suite evaluation tool. It typically is three parts. It's a governance piece. How well do I get you ready as a board member to make decisions on behalf of the membership? There's an innovation component that says, am I making decisions today that are going to pay off 3 years from now? And then there's those leadership competencies that Superman or Superwoman have that make them good CEOs. The fourth component we're adding this year for our clients is leadership under crisis. So how are you dealing with this information? Are you getting your board ready to do this? If you participated in some of our webinars the last couple of months, we've done this seamless move to stay at home. We've kept access to the funds for the members. We've tried to make it as seamless as possible for the membership. Those are the things that we should be rewarded and recognized for this year, as opposed to what was ROA. And what I want to mention is, if you're interested in looking at that evaluation tool, we're happy to share that with the industry. Send me a request. It won't be ready till the middle of next month because we're still polishing it. But john@dhilton.com, and I'm happy to share that with you. And we'd love to get a body of data to see if this was the right way to play it this year.
Well, one of the other things that we have been doing that's a little bit different is we went back to 08, 09, and 10, and we did a number of employee surveys and a number of member surveys during those periods of time. And for the clients that are interested in doing those surveys again, we're able to measure how well you did during that last financial fiasco in this environment and see if there are any differences in the way you've either treated the members or treated the employees. So if anybody's interested in that, john@dhilton.com.
David at dhilton would also love to answer that question. But just to give you an idea, I mean, we keep over 2 million members surveys in our database. We have 60,000 CEO evaluations in the database, and that's the context of where we're making these recommendations for our clients. So our next slide on onboarding plans, because like we've said, there's going to be this pipeline. You're going to be excited, then you're going to get to the point that you have to do online interviews or wait, or you're going to make the hire sight unseen, and then now we got to get them through the door and productive. So right now, 60% of the respondents said we're not committed right now because of COVID-19 when we're going to start a due date. 33% said we're going to do it right away. And then 6.7% said we're going to do it, but we're going to do it remotely.
Yeah, it's really hard to do onboarding when your employee is at home. That is something that we have not come up with a plan as to how to do that. The other thing that is becoming a little bit of a problem as time goes on this year is strategic planning. How is that going to work out for the credit union? Is that going to be virtual as well? And also the budget. You need input from a number of different people within the organization for the budget. How are you going to be able to get all that information so that you can do the budget? So there's more than just the onboarding going on. There's a lot of other things that are happening as well.
Yeah. So you think for our HR people on the call today, you make a staff offer for a branch teller or an MSR on Friday, and you just cross your fingers on Monday they show up. And isn't it the worst day for an HR person is to look, you have 13 voicemails when you get there first thing Monday morning because you don't know who's coming or not coming. But in this case, the C-suite's no different. There is a correlation. The longer there is between you make the offer and they show up, there's a chance they could back out, have second thoughts. Or what's happening now is, well, there was all this excitement that they hired me, then I haven't heard from them. It's almost like I've been ghosted. And that can set the relationship off the wrong I guess, term or whatever you want to call it. So when David talks about strategic planning, ALM meetings, budgeting, forecasting, why not get those folks involved when you can, even though they don't have an official start date, because it's only going to ramp them up faster and integrate them. So our next slides, and we'll go through this fairly quickly, is so there was a second body of participants in the survey that said, we're not doing a search now, but we still wanted to see what their practices would be when they ramp that back up. Okay, so are you going to use alternatives to face-to-face? And the idea is that videos and telephone are going to be what they use. And then 28% said, no, we still want to keep more of that traditional look. So has it changed? No. Okay, so leadership personality test. This mirrors what we saw for the folks that are going through the process right now. No changes really, or no really differences there. When we offer contracts, this is, again, mirror, right? There's nothing really that you saw there that was a little bit different.
One of the things with contracts, if you're actually talking about a contract, as opposed to an offer. You typically at the CEO level, it's about 50-50. 50% of the CEOs get contracts and 50% of the CEOs don't get contracts. So again, it's a question of how the question was asked and what your perception of a contract is, whether it's an employment agreement, an offer sheet, or an actual contract.
Okay. And same thing with termination benefits. Again, we think that's people are relying more on a stronger employee handbook that would have that language in there. So I don't think we're giving you any information here that says you need to change your practice. I think everybody's got that pretty much well under control. So when we wrap up, the thing we want to talk about is some ideas and some guidance on how we go forward. So when we talk about the new normal, we really think execs are rethinking their careers. Some are energized with this and want to do things. Some people are saying, I'm ready to get out. The retirement's okay. But the second bullet is really interesting. We've seen boards and CEOs actually reshuffle their succession planning order. It's become a differentiator of how well people have done under crisis.
And I think it's not just credit unions. It's the whole world.
It's the world.
It's the country. If you think about listening to the different news channels and which governors and which mayors and which political candidates have come on, and you as an individual have been impressed by them. These are people you may not have ever have seen before. These are people you may not have even known about before, and all of a sudden they become the potential leaders of our country in the future. So I think it's the same thing with credit unions. The cream rises to the top.
So we always put a plug in that succession planning should be reassessed every year. And I think this year you have a lot of meat to go through other than it's kind of what we did last year. So that's an interesting finding. And then finally, the leadership skills are obviously changing. If you go back 10 years, what it took to be a strong CEO, 20 years at the C level, obviously innovation, obviously technology are coming to the forefront. I am proud to be in this industry in the sense that we walked the walk when it came to technology to make this happen. You saw other retail, financial services, people have some hiccups. The credit industry as a whole really shined. And I think, again, that's what we need to reward and recognize our executives when it's all said and done this year.
There are a number of credit unions that are kind of complaining that they're getting so many new shares in the door. I think that's a testament to the fact that the members trust you. The members have money and they want to put it with the place they trust, and it's coming into the credit union in droves. And I personally think that's a good thing. Yeah, it may bring your net worth down, and it may mess up a couple of other ratios. But the truth is that getting people to bring money into the credit union is a phenomenal problem to have.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're on the fence as a credit union saying, should we initiate a search or should we wait till there's no normal. It's going to be a new normal, obviously. So this is kind of a checklist that we would go through. So if you were a volunteer, if you're on the board, we're saying, what's your job? Is to mitigate risk, not to have absence of risk. So look at the things that are going on right now. How critical is this role? Can we can we wait 12 months to be filled or 8 months to be filled? Does everyone have the constituents have a time to commit to the interview process? Are they in a location where they can be involved? So I'm not going to go through this list. The one I wanted David to comment on was just the optics of, can we really hire an executive if we were going to furlough or close a branch? How do you reconcile those two thoughts? Uh-oh, here it comes.
Now you ask me this question?
Yeah, I ask you this question now.
First of all, I think you can recruit in this environment. Yes, it may take a little bit longer, and you have to go through a little bit more gyrations to get the candidate that you want. But there are candidates out there. There are people that are looking to make moves. Different places, different cities, different regions, different locales. That's not a problem. It may just take a little bit longer to do that, and you may have to be a little bit more careful that you know that the family, not just the candidate, but the family is all for making the move.
Absolutely.
That is really important. You have no idea how many times in the past 35 years I've gotten on the phone, and luckily I've gotten not the candidate, but I've gotten the spouse, or I've gotten a child on the phone, and I say, "Hi, this is David Hilton. I'm calling for Joe. We're talking about making a move to Albuquerque, New Mexico, or wherever it is." And the answer on the other side, on the other end of the phone is, "Who? What? Where?" Or I get phone slammed down by the child who doesn't want to move at all.
No.
So,
Hey, David, that actually happened to me. My dad worked for Amica. We moved every 3 years, and I was a freshman in high school, and I picked up the phone, and the same time my mom picked up the other phone, and my dad goes, "Hey, guess what? We're moving to Tulsa." Guess who slammed the phone down? And thanks for bringing back a horrible memory. And of course, David will pay for my therapy now. So that was great. Hey, we had another question come up here. It says, how do you evaluate or consider risk taking as a component of leadership when everybody's under fire and there's so much pressure? Because isn't the natural inclination to say, I'll defer that, or we need to wait?
Good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, my take on that question is, what's good for the member is so important in this case. So if it can wait, it can wait. But if we can't wait and it's going to harm the membership, whether it's seamless to delivery, if it's seamless to access, we were born to do this, guys, as an industry, and this is where we shine. So you do need to look at risk taking. You can put a business model together, you can get a great ROA, and you can just churn it every year. But if you ask, are you helping the right member, all the members? And the answer might be no. So there's a disconnect between getting a financial return and what's good for the member. What do you think?
I agree.
Okay. So I hope that helps.
That question's coming from Kent LeGrand, who could have asked us on the phone if he wanted to.
So during the evaluation process, he said, let's look at how you would look at that. So we believe in behavioral interviews. Just give us a time, an example of how you do that. So in an interview, you always run this catch-22 of no offense to what you've done in the past, but we want to do this, a different way. Or do you want to just say, hey guys, stroke the egos, you're great, we want to do same old, same old. I think the candidates that do the best are the ones that are real honest, that say, with all due respect to how we've done it, we might need to look at this differently to take a deeper risk.
Well, and I think that when you're interviewing, to get back to the question about risk,
yeah,
when you're interviewing candidates, I think you have to be very, very upfront with them and honest with them, and explain exactly what's going on in your organization, in your environment. And if you're replacing someone because it didn't work out with whoever was there, that needs to be discussed. If this is a new position, this needs to be discussed. I think you just need to spend as much time as you can being as honest as you can with the potential candidate.
Okay. And then if we were put together a new norm or procedural, think about first round interviews being done by a video process, maybe a second round talking about technical issues on a video, making sure if you're using testing, use testing at that point, and then keep people engaged until you can get to that final part where whether it's going to be in person or not. But remember, if you're in the market, it's a two-way street, right? You're getting interviewed as well at the same time, and the candidate might not want to go across country.
That's correct.
no desire to go cross country like, what is it, elbow bump you or whatever, to get a feel for culture, get a feel for, David, the classic thing you always tell me is when a candidate, you bring up something like, here's an opportunity. The candidate's first three questions are,
what's the board like? What's the management like? And what's the compensation like?
Yes.
Not necessarily in that order.
So if that's the case, I don't think we've overcome a way to make everybody feel good until you get in that room together and see if it's going to be a, marriage potential, so to speak.
Max has a question. Are you seeing candidates hesitate across your clients to relocate due to pandemic? They may not be able to fly and visit in terms of the number of months positions stay. In terms of the number of months positions stay vacant. Do they stay vacant longer? Yes, Max. The answer is yes, we are having a problem with that. There are a number of credit unions that have made a decision that they're not flying at all this year. There is no flying. There is no travel this year. So in that circumstance, how do you get on a plane when the rest of your management team is not allowed to get on the plane, the board is not allowed to get on a plane, and you deciding that you're going to go on an interview across the country? That if that's happening, that is absolutely a problem, and those candidates are going to have to bow out. Is it taking longer? Yes, it's taking longer. The typical search takes 3 months, maybe at worst 4 months. It's now taking 5 and 6 months. And the reason for the extra 2 months is getting everyone, both the candidates, plural, and the board or the CEO or whoever's doing the interview at the credit union, getting everybody on the same page and on the same calendar. And that is taking longer.
Okay. So our final slide today, we talk about beware of the safe bet. So I think this goes along with some of the risk-taking issues that we've kind of brought up today is, well, we have an internal candidate. They're okay. So let's not have to go through all of these hurdles of doing the logistics. Let's just give them an opportunity. And if it works, great. If it not, we'll just kick the can down the road. So what we talk about is there's a responsibility as a volunteer, as responsible as a CEO to do your due diligence, to cast the widest net for the best person for the organization.
If the best person is the internal candidate, go for it. That makes the most amount of sense, and it's certainly the easiest. But what I always say is the person in the office next door potentially is the best candidate. And that only applies if they are the best candidate. But if you have a choice between bringing somebody from across the country or from next door, you're always going to be better off bringing in somebody from next door.
Yeah. So this is kind of the list of pitfalls that we see that people kind of take away out if they don't have the perfect candidate or the great candidate internally.
Now, that's not to say you may not want to look nationally. There's nothing wrong with looking nationally and then hiring internally. But at least this way you know what you're getting, and you know that you're getting the very best for you.
And this is a David Hilton quote at the bottom here. You wouldn't do a merger without due diligence. So whether it's internal or external, you need to have a rigorous look of evaluation of the talent.
I never said rigorous.
Okay.
It's a roundabout quote.
So that kind of concludes our program today. We have a few questions, but just want to, before we get to them, just thank everybody for participating. And when you look at D. Hilton, the three things that we commit to as an organization is we commit to getting you the best data to make the best decisions, so you have peace of mind. And that's beyond everything else that we do, is we commit to that. We want you to make strategic business decisions, not compensation decisions, not recruiting decisions. It's good for the business. And we always try to frame our projects and our work for you that way. And then finally, we try to make sure that compensation is not an emotional issue. that it's a good business practice for whatever you decide to do for your membership. So if you have any questions after you see this or you share the information, see your email's up there. So you might get a few.
You're now known.
But Jeff, why don't you go through the questions and make sure we got a few more minutes left. We'd love to answer as many as we can.
Perfect. So regarding relocation expenses, what is typically covered and what is typically the budget?
The budget's hard to say because it depends on, where you're going and where you're coming from. But typically speaking, it's 2 household trips with spouse. And if you want to bring family, if the board will allow you to do that, or if the CEO will allow you to do that, it's 90 days of temporary housing. It's storage of your furniture if you are going to take temporary housing. It's closing costs. It's don't be silent. Help me here. I forgot.
Well, the house hunting and spouse.
The house hunting and spouse I mentioned.
Okay.
There's closing costs. There's
well, let me piggyback real quick. I think when you talked earlier about this, what time of year it is, is there kids or things we're having to leave? So there might be more.
There may be more. The trips may be more involved because it may be getting involved with school, real estate agents, houses of worship, things of that nature as well. But what the goal is, when all is said and done, the goal is you want the candidate to come out whole. You don't want them to make money on the deal. You don't want them to lose money on the deal. So whatever money comes out of their pocket is what you need to spend on relocation. That's a good rule of thought. It should be a no-win situation, no-lose situation for the candidate. They should come out whole.
So this year, like we've done for the last 19 years, we'll have a compensation forecast coming out for 2021. In our executive section, we do have actual data we compile all our offers, so we'll be able to give you a specific amount on those types of that benefit, as long with perks and cars and retirement packages and those types of things will be coming out.
Okay, looks like we have time for just one more question. It looks like I'll be able to combine these. Are you seeing C-suite rethinking their lives post-COVID and asking for more remote work, more family time, et cetera, or actually working outside of the local area? Well,
we've always kind of taken the position there's tremendous synergy when we can all get together. If you think we've worked so many years as an industry to break down silos, like it's just not lending, it's just not retail, it's just not IT. And if you look at all of your projects or initiatives that you have strategically, you got everybody working together. So until you feel real good about the team is, firing all cylinders, it's nice to have everybody together. Now, we asked the question in March, are you having some people stay home and some people, go to work so you could rotate because of the virus? And you saw some limitations there of what got done. But as we've worked out those issues, it's become more, it's able to get people back together.
We've proven to a certain degree that some things are capable of being done remotely without the production going down.
Yeah.
D. Hilton Associates, just as an aside, D. Hilton Associates is all located in the same building today. Now, what we were able to do is we were able to take space in other parts of the Hilton Associates or other parts of the building that D. Hilton Associates is not located in, and put employees in those places. So everybody is at least is in the same building. And that has given us the synergy that we needed to get everybody together when necessary, or get whoever we needed together when necessary to be able to make some decisions. And that has been our philosophy and has always been our philosophy.
Yeah, when I've done organizational review work, there's always one or two off cases where, she worked for us for 10 years, but the spouse is leaving, or she needs to help out with a kid in another part of the country. So can they work remotely? And this is the C-suite level. And it starts off, it works out fine, but over time it seems to degrade the sense of that camaraderie, the sense of team, because people could come and go and they don't know that person as well. Now, the kind of the second or third part of the question is, spending more time with family. Obviously, the more you can commit to work-life balance, the better to keep a team together. But the day of an executive working the 90 and 100 hours a week is sometimes a flag now.
Mm-hmm.
That they're not getting. What can't they do in a base a normal amount of time?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard more stories of CEOs. So please go home.
We all appreciate it.
We'd all appreciate if you just go home and maybe take a shower.
We'll all consider it a kindness.
Yeah. But anyway, hopefully that kind of broaches the subject of that, because obviously we're going to have to answer that question a lot more going forward. Is, do I have to come back? Can I work from another part, and those types of things? So we'll keep an eye on it for you.
And if you have specific questions about specific positions or specific criteria, don't hesitate to email us or call us, and we'll be able to help.
Mm-hmm.
Or we'll try to be able to help.
And this has all been one giant experiment when it comes down to it, and relearning how to do that position or any position as a remote option. And so the training wheels have kind of come off. So we're slowly but surely seeing this does work or this doesn't work, but we haven't seen the exact specification of that yet.
That's a great way to put it.
Before COVID-19, only 5% of the work population work from home. So whatever number it is now, it's greater than 5%.
So, in the coming months, we're going to explore. Obviously, there's some cost savings of moving call centers and different departments away from a high cost downtown type of operation.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, we're going to keep strong tabs on culture, dynamics, synergy, and make sure it's just not a cost savings when it's really not going to be a cost savings.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll keep that on the list of things we're monitoring throughout the year.
Talking about touch points, making sure that even if they are remote, that they are constantly being in touch, trying to keep some of that synergy together. It's interesting how it's developing, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll be quiet. Get y'all back to work.
Thank you all very much. We really appreciate the time you've taken, and we appreciate the opportunity. And again, if there's anything we can do, please feel free to give us a call or email us, or both.
Exactly.
David@dhilton.com.
Remember that email address. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, guys. I really do appreciate it. John and David, we always appreciate being able to hear your expertise. I mean, you guys are bringing decades worth of industry knowledge and thought leadership. So it's always great. Thank you so much for spending the time. We'll send the recording of this presentation out. Give us about 3 to 5 days. You'll see that coming to anybody that actually registered. We'll also receive a survey that'll greatly help us. We always are looking to improve ways that these webinars are giving you good content, giving you good resources and good information. So please take a couple moments to fill one of those out. Let us know how you're doing, as well as it'll give you an opportunity that if you would like us to cover a particular topic, go ahead and make those recommendations. We'll be more than happy to take that in consideration and may make a future webinar based off of that. If you have any questions that we didn't get to, please feel free to reach out to us. We'll also go back through the chat, and if you had a question that we didn't get to, we'll follow up with you with an answer from there. But until then, thank you so much for joining us. From all of us here at D. Hilton Associates, we hope that you and yours are staying safe and healthy, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.